Hello and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of YouTube. I am your host, the whiteologist, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and this is Black Minds News Report. Black Minds News is to report, articulate, transmit, communicate, insinuate, develop, investigate, decode, unveil, spread the news, whether it's by news, video, website, or quotes from publications. As I articulate this information, I ask that the creator universe be here, heart, soul, mind, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created this land that we call the United States, we, the B.A.D.O.S, Black American descendant of slaves, we, the today's children and offspring and present generation, we give honor to our ancestors. You know what the motto of my show is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. Today's date again is February 26, 2020. Have you heard? Well, I got some stories. And again, we're going to put a theme today. This theme goes in with the fact that everybody wants to say that black folks have a Mr. Snuffleupagus. I'm going to say that again. Some of you may not know who Snuffleupagus is. Maybe you used to watch Sesame Street. Big Bird had a friend that nobody knew. Well, it's kind of like black folks saying that certain things happen. They say that we have our eyes wide shut. And when we start to tell them about Snuffleupagus, they say Snuffleupagus ain't real. But yet, when people get caught in certain situations and they start to espouse about what done happened, it reveals Snuffleupagus. Mr. Blows Your Mind, what you talking about? Well, you just gonna have to stay tuned and go through this broadcast to figure out where I'm going with this. So again, stay tuned as we get into this broadcast. Hey, how's y'all doing, everybody? Again, this is your host, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and welcome to Black Minds News Report. First and foremost, I want to say, what's good to the fam? Old subscribers and new. What's good, y'all? See, some of y'all been over here kind of getting in and watching a little bit. You know them numbers, they can't get past 100. Even though I got over 2.933 thousand subscribers. For some odd reason, those who better go back, and if you have not clicked on all notifications, maybe you need to go back and do that, because some of y'all may not be getting the notification. But if it's just you have, thank you anyway for taking time out, coming over here and clicking on the video. Passerbys, if you happen to pass by and see this thumbnail or the title might have caught your attention, welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. Go down the aisle. We always got a grand opening. You can go down the aisle, see some things that you might like, having to see something to make you feel some kind of way. Remember, the motto of my show is the truth don't need no partner. All right? No, don't need no partner, man. You don't need no partner. You know why I don't need no partner? Because the truth just don't need no partner, right? So there's been a lot going on. Got political season. People are talking about what they're trying to, I guess, propagate to people, tell them the reason why you need to pick them. And that's the other side of the fence, right? It's kind of like I live right near the beach, where the sand there and the resort, but then you go across that damn Fence is the other side of the part that they talking about where this is all tropical, right? And that's what some of us kind of reside in, right? We live in that kind of area. And so I seen these stories over the last period of time. One of them might be a reheat, right, that I had done. And we'll talk about that. But we're going to start off with this theme here because, you know, being B.A.D.O.S. in this land and understanding that we come from a peculiar and particular history and what we have endured through this history, a lot of people would like to say have imaginatively, like Snuffleupagus went away or don't exist. Only we know it exists, but other people don't seem to acknowledge it. Only time that they acknowledge it is when you have them to go back over something they might have said or done and say, well, what's this, right? So we're going to start off here with this here is the starting of the theme that we're going to get into because we're just going to have to do it that way, right? Because that's just what I got to do. And the theme of this is for the simple fact that we talk about criminality, we're talking about being labeled as outcasts and how policies seem to dictate whether it be in the positive with us or the negative. And we have to kind of sift through all this mess to try to figure out where the needle is in this haystack. And so I think it's incumbent that, you know, if we're going to have platforms and we're going to be doing media and news, now again, we're not like the general media that you go on your 2, 5, 7, and 9 and watch. We do it from a black mind's perspective. Now, a lot of people may not agree with it because they say, well, you guys, what the hell do you know? You're not accredited or you're not lettered. But you don't live in my world. So my articulation might be speaking another language to you. But those who it resonate with know exactly what I am talking about. Right? So I'm going to do this. So can we get ready? Get it ready? Okay, we're going to get it ready. All right, we're going to get it right today, right? You know, last time we got you was kind of off on your game. So let's go ahead and get into this, and then I will come back after this, and then I will start to lay out what I is talking about. So let's check this out, and we should be right back after, I think this, right? So let's get it.
Former Mayor Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg, is being forced to respond to audio surfacing from 2015.
The recording reveals the candidate talking about the controversial police practice called stop and frisk. It gave police authority to detain people suspected of committing a crime and searching them for weapons. The targets of the search being overwhelmingly black and Latino.
95% of your murderers and murder victims fit one MO. You can just take the description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all the cops. They are male, minorities, 15 to 21. You put all the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why we do it? Because that's where all the crime is. And the way you get the guns out of the kids' hands is to throw them against the wall and frisk them.
Bloomberg himself apologized for his policy months ago, just days before launching his presidential campaign, saying, quote, I now see that we could and should have acted sooner and acted faster to cut the stops. I wish we had. I'm sorry we did that.
right? So we are back, right? So yeah, something had came out talking about the newly running candidate for the Democratic Party, Michael Bloomberg. Those who might know that he was in New York as the mayor, and he is pretty much known by we, as black folks, as the stop and frisk mayor, right? Who implemented that, right? And so a video has emerged as him saying, as coming out the horse's mouth, as they say. And so let's take it, some of the stuff that he is saying that is going to lay the foundation for our newscast for this day. So let's go what he said, right? Right, so according to Michael Bloomberg, okay, I guess we could go over there, right? Can we do it that way? Can we do this? I guess we do it that way, right? All right, so we see there where Michael Bloomberg says that stop and risk, all right? Stop and frisk, right? It pertains on the suspicion of crime, right? Searching them for weapons and searching for, which was overwhelming black and Latinos, as they said in there, right? That's what the statistics still show. That the blacks and Latinos, Latinx, right? Those who check the box as being black, seem to be at a high proportionate in the numbers of being stopped and frisked. Michael Bloomberg said, well, this is why this happens, right? As you see on your screen there, we're going to take him verbatimly what he said. Now, according to what they showed on that report and what the words that he used, said 95% of murders, right? 95% of your murders and murderers and murder victims fit one MO. Right? Yeah, MO. You done heard Mr. Blowsurmind use that term before, right? Modus operandi. That's what they call it. Modus operandi, right? And so, according to law, when you say modus operandi, they said this is the method of pertaining or doing things. Call it MO, right? The term used by police and criminal investigators to describe the particular methods of a criminal activity and refers to patterns of criminal behavior so distinct that separate crimes or wrongful conduct are recognized as works of same person. I'm going to say that again. Modus operandi. Method of operating or doing things. Terms used by police and criminal investigators to describe the particular method of a criminal activity. It refers to pattern of criminal behavior so distinct that separate crimes or wrongful conduct are recognized as work of same person. Okay? And so, according to what Bloomberg said, he said you can just take a description, right? You could just take a description, right? Take a description. Is that just any black could do? Right? Should that be a description being detailed as to we want to be certain who we looking for? Or are we going to just generalize and anyone will do? That we see people who are coming out of jail after 30, 40 years. Right? So according to Bloomberg's words, says that you can Xerox this, right? Xerox this modus operandi that we talking about, right? Pass it on to all the cops. And he said they are male minorities, right, 15 to 25, right? So if you in the age of 15 to 25, you fit the modus operandi. Just if a police officer feels you're suspicious of a crime, right? And so this is a person who is running to run this country, right? That's the kind of thing we have to look at. We have to look at somebody's coming in and somebody wants to be the chief and commander. They want to be, right, the head, the H, well, in this case, I guess we still can use the HNIC, but the word they use was like blowing the horn on your car, right? So, what was the other word? What did he say after that? He said something else too, right? He went on, he said something there. Let's go ahead and get that in there, right? So he says, we put all the cops in minority neighborhoods, right? Now he said, we put them all in the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why do we do it? Huh? You're asking me the question. I know in your minds, you're asking me, why do you do it? It's because that's where all the crime is. Hello, it's simple. What are you thinking? There's no crime where we live at. Well, what is the cause and effects? What is the core issue of why there is high crime in what you say minority neighborhoods? There has to be a reason. Has anybody figured out what that reason is? Oh, it got something to do with economics, right? It got something to do with people lack their access opportunities to acquire, right? And they say, according to the book that they gave, said if a man don't work, a man don't eat. Well, I guess if you ain't got no job, then you got to kind of figure out another way that you would call work. And it puts bread and puts butter on your bread, right? But we have to say, well, how do you get to say that we put the cops in the neighborhoods of minorities? Well, let's go historically back to the plantation. Overseer from officer, overseer. Check the similarities, right? So we wouldn't think that you would be policing where you live at because, again, as they say, all the crime is in minority neighborhoods. Now, when we look at crime, are there difference in scales of crime? Like, there's white-collar crimes, right? Blue-collar, right? So, who monitors those who do white-collar crimes? Not those police, right? That ain't their job. Their job is not to worry about that there. Their job is to, again, as they said statistically, that 95% of all the murderers, and those who are being murdered are only in minority communities. 95%. Wow. Huh? So, what about those people who live amongst that are not participants in that? So they live in an environment that is dangerous that you couldn't even imagine to live yourself there, right? You wouldn't live over there, right? That's specified strictly for you. And is there a cause and effect that created? Again, they talk about redlining. So, is this this somebody else's concoction that has now just, the sickness is just, when you get to a point of a sickness where it's like, well, you only got 2 weeks left to live, right? So, that's where all the crime is at, y'all. All the crime is around where we at, right? And so he said also that and the way you get the guns out of the kids' hands So throw them against the wall and frisk them. Right? Just those words in itself just shows, people always talking about, having empathy, and there is no empathy. So you have one that end up making legislations that said that they're going to fight my mom. I don't care how they got there. I don't care what we did back there. I don't care. Just as long as you keep away from my mom. See? You don't care. And here's another individual. So, okay. Now, you have some people who advocate on behalf of telling B.A.D.O.S. and others that say, well, if you don't have anybody who is speaking to any of your wants and needs, then how do you support somebody who don't look in your direction like there's no life or no hope over there where you at anyway? So when you end up getting two people, they say, you have to choose the candidate of the least, the lesser of the two evils. There used to be a term they used to say called none of the above, right? None of the above, right? And so because people say none of the above, everybody's getting mad because they're trying to find other ways and avenues to get around it. But look how you think about where we live at, right? This is where we live at. Now, those guns don't have gun shops in the hood, but somehow them guns get down there. You get the kids and throw them up, but why not stop that pipeline? That's how the kids getting the guns. Well, that would be bad for business, would it? For somebody, it would be bad for business, right? And maybe it's a twofold cut because it's doing as much as one purport and say, as somebody had talked about the carnage, right? Might be carnage, but somebody's facilitating and somebody is also putting things, because if you don't got no money, you can't buy no gun, right? So if the avenues of how people are obtaining are through illegal means, then it would seem logical that to stop the illegal ways of getting shit into those communities. So we know they got to play the game. We understand that, right? We understand. You just got to play the game, right? So my thing here is this, right? So that's the theme we're going to start off with, right? All right, we're going to start off with that theme right there. Because that in itself has long implications amongst us. They said 15 to 25. They said it was males, right? But when you pump that kind of propaganda into, whether it's your institution and those who work in it, and they believe and drink the Kool-Aid that you dispensing, then as cold as your heart was when you said what those words is, then that'll be the same way that those who are employed by your institution will feel amongst the people, whether they fit the modus operandi or not. They have been deemed and stamped as outcasts, as the downtrodden, right? The God-forsaken ones. And so if a modus operandi, a description can be Xerox, and you said 95% of all that is being done down there, then it must matriculate down. It's in your genes. It means it should be in your offsprings, right? So that means everyone down there, regardless of 15 to 25, they're all suspicion, because this is the environment you live in. So, do anybody remember when I did this story here, right? Do I got that here? I think I got it here. Let's see. Do I got that? We should add that, right? Let's see. Is that it? No, that's not it either, right? Let's see. You off here. You're not right, boy. Well, you supposed to have that already set up, right? You got it? I don't think you got it, man. Hold on. All right, let's see. Okay, you got it? It should be under that, though. Right, what happened to that? Okay, you got it. There you go. There you go. All right. So do anybody y'all remember this? Remember when I did this back in September 23rd of 2019, right? Did any of y'all catch that? When I did that, the Florida 6-year-old girl who was arrested for tantrum at school, right? A lot of people didn't see that, and they kind of, again, what happens is, for those who might be questioning their mind, how a person could be in the business almost 8 years. Again, used to get 250,000 views, 50,000, 30,000, you name it, I was getting it. After April 1st of 2014, extinction of the white race, and they just been going downhill, and they got it now sequestered down to about 100, right? So what happens is when I put a video out, maybe for that first couple hours, it's live and active, and as it progresses, as later into the hours, 15, 18, 20 hours, it just dies out. They just kills it out, the system, right? So anyway, I did this video on this, right? You can kind of see a little sister in there, her face is long, right? And something just came out yesterday about this, right? So let me go ahead and show you this. And this was the video of that day, because when I originally did the story, there was no video, it was just a story. I covered it for those who did see it. If you're not, maybe you need to go back and check it. If you're interested, you don't have to be interested in it. And this is what took place. Again, the All-Seeing-Eye was there to capture it. And then I will come back after that. We ready to do this? Let's see, we ready? Gonna set it up, right? And yeah, you could do that. You could do that too. Yeah, we could do that one again. Yeah, okay. All right, so go ahead, crank it up, and then let's get it.
The desert goes.
Okay, she's gonna have to come with us now.
Okay, Kai, you gotta go with them, baby girl.
Stand up. Okay, come over here.
What are those for?
It's for you.
Your hands, okay? Come over here, honey. It's not gonna hurt.
No!
Okay,
No, I want haircuts on! No! Don't put haircuts on! Please! Help me! Help me!
Let's go.
Your grandma will come pick you up, okay?
Oh, I was here. Oh, I just saw you.
Alright.
Come on, let's go.
No, please let me go.
Okay, come on. You can tell me what happened in the car, okay?
I don't want to go to the police car.
You don't want to?
No, please.
You have to.
No, please. Give me a second chance.
You gotta go.
I don't want to use this video. No! Please! 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 Please let me go! No! No, help me!
Okay.
Please! No!
Give me a second.
Right, we are back, right? So that was the little 6-year-old, and her name is Kaya Roll, right? And back earlier in September when I did this story, looked like Kaya, again being 6 years old, had a bad day at school. You know, we have grown folks who had bad days, and then why would we not, being as adults, understand that sometimes frustration happens at all ages, right? Irritability and crankiness. There could be some problems as cause and effects to it, right? So we see that little Kaya was at school that particular day. Looks like she kind of acted out. They decided to call the office. Those who do the hands-on work. Seemed like the assistant principal as well came. Accordingly, that said that the staff had grabbed her, right, by the wrist to calm her down. And looks like Kaya started to lash out and kick the assistant principal, right? And she's 6 years old. Now, is she supposed to be doing that? No, right? And just sometimes, you know, you do have some disgruntled students, right? Some of us been in class and we done had people who are disrupted that keep everybody from learning, and they do the proper thing, and that's what happened. We don't condone when you're wrong. But we have to understand that, you know, being adults that's why your parent or your adult is, because you have in your life experiences to be able to deal with certain situations that are handleable, right? Now, we're not talking about somebody got weapons. We're not talking about somebody even being abusive in language. We're just saying the little girl is wrong for kicking, but again, cause and effects, and okay, we handle it in the best, in the proper way that should be. So we see that somehow that the police was end up called, and as you've seen in the video, that was the video showing what actually took place. According to the mother said that little Kaya takes medications, and this medication might have triggered because she's irritable, because sometimes the lack of sleep they call it sleep anapia. So you know what I'm talking about, right? So she lacked their sleep, right? And so she kind of acted out. But it was this assistant principal, according to WKMG, who reported what the police had said, that the assistant principal wanted to press charges on Cairo. I must say that again. According to the report by WKMG, who had supposedly what the police report said, stated that it was the assistant principal who wanted to press charges. But according to the family who ended up getting the video, said that the staff questioned the arrest with the video show, which we did not see that part. But they said the family is backing, supporting that those who worked there were actually kind of questioned, why are y'all arresting and taking this little girl in? And when I originally did this story, it was talking about how they took her mug shots, fingerprinted her, right? And there was like, I don't know, somewhere between 5 and 15 miles away. So the individual that you've seen that, you know, who arrested her, that's putting on handcuffs. Now think about that too. A 6-year-old being handcuffed, right? I remember back in the days, they had that show came on called Scared Straight, right? Remember that, when Scared Straight? Get some others I thought they was tough and put them in a situation around others that you know in the environment. And see how tough you is? Scared the hell out of our mothers who ain't never been to jail and seen that. Was like, damn, they don't want to go to jail, right? So we can understand if you're going to try to do the psych game on them. But no, they actually, we heard they said it was a twisty tie. It kind of sounded like cuffs to me, right? I heard cuffs before, right? And so they went and put her through the whole rigmarole. Mugshot, fingerprints. Then later on, they talk about they dropped the charges and then they had expunged her record. Expunged it. A 6-year-old for kicking the assistant principal. So, according to what it said then, if the assistant principal did not request to have Kaya arrested, then who was it that wanted her arrested? Right? That becomes dun 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 dun. Who done it? Right? Dun 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 dun. Right? So let's go back and look at something. Right? Let me go back and show you something here, right? And that's the article that they show where the information came from. It says new video shows 6-year-old girl crying during arrest after a temper tantrum, right? Now, the person you see in that picture, was that not the individual that was in the video, right? That was the dude that was arresting her, right? That is the one that we seen put in the handcuff, walking her and putting her in the car, right? And so I'm kind of like, okay, so accordingly, the person who done this is fired. But I want y'all to see this. I want you to see this. And, you know, that's who I'm assuming who they were talking to, right? I got another picture of the brother right there, or man right there, right? And that look like the same cat, right? Do that not look like the same cat? Like the same cat to me, right? Right? That seem like, do that like the same dude that's right there? Like that look like that could be him, right? Yeah, like he little had hair. He let his hair grow a little bit there, right? So I was kind of puzzled, like, well, this was the cat that was actually arresting her. So, okay, then what they talking about? Because later on they show this individual. Let me show who y'all talking about, okay? They show this individual here. Huh? Florida cop fired for arresting 2 elementary school children. And I was like, well, wait a minute. That don't look like the same cat that don't look like the same cat. That look like a different dude. Right? So, hold on. I was like, hold on, man. I was confused, right? So I looked at it, I went back, found this picture here, and said, wait a minute. Okay. So I see, dude is the one arresting her. And now you can see clearly that is kind of a twisty, twisty handcuff. That ain't real handcuffs, right? So I'm like, wait a minute. So why are they showing this black dude? Well, I guess what it is we have to ask that question, who's videotaping? I'm going to say that again. Who is the one videotaping what is being done? So I said, oh, that's who it is. You the one that did that, right? It was this individual right here. I think his name is Dennis Turner, you can see on your screen, right? So Dennis Turner, a black man looking, right? Because everything in my skin ain't my kin. That even the individual, when we see in the video, he's trying to console her in a way, and he's kind of like, damn, I actually got to do this? I'll tell you why when you get in the car, please, huh? Cries. So just imagine those stories we be hearing when it ain't just in the capacity of an institution doing it, when some sick mug out there doing it. So we don't really want to imagine that, right? We don't want to really imagine that. But look at this cat on your screen, right? What is it in you that you see people like yourself and authorizing for her to go through this process for what? Attention tantrum? Now, some people may know what I'm talking about. Some people may not know what I'm talking about. You know, sometimes people have, you know, babies. I'm not saying whether they got colic. They just irritable. You done changed. You done burped them. You done fed them. They just irritable as hell. What do some parents have done? We're going to say old school way. We're going to say today, you do that today, they come to your house, right? You better say that shit openly, right? But anyway, you might do it back in the day. They let the baby cry it out, right? Go on there and cry it out. Let's go and air it out. You get that good 10, 15-minute cry. Today they might call that child abuse, but back then they let the baby cry. And then after you get that sleep, he be all right, right? Let it get it all out. It's kind of like when we seen Rodney King, and y'all talking about Rodney King was all agitated and high, but he was driving that damn car, and then because he would not comply, so you can put them handcuffs on, y'all beat the hell out of him, right? Maybe I should just go ahead and let his ass fall the hell out. He was, it's the way y'all reported that he was all tore up. I mean, come on, right? But, you know, some people don't have the patience, right? A lot of people just don't have the patience. But what I want to say is the fact is that individual that you see on your screen there, you know, looks like he could be in the family. See, that's why a lot of people, when they talk about, say, we Africans, right? We Africans. Yeah, but it's not about how one looks on the outside. It's about what is one in his head. So you can look at somebody and say, brother, matter of fact, remember in Amistad? Anybody remember seeing that movie Amistad? Remember when they had Sinky in them and they had finally got off the boat and they was walking them through the town? And then Sinky was, you know, the king, the one who killed the lion with the rock. And his partner was like, hey, look, there's a brother. So it was Morgan Freeman in like a carriage or some shit. And he was, you know, galloping by and he was like, brother. Sinky was like, that's no brother. That's a white man. Do I need to say that again? Do I need to get that analogy again? Amistad, the movie, was Sinky and they was getting off the boat. And Morgan Freeman was riding around in this carriage right next to them that they was going, and they was looking at him. He had on all the fine threads and the top hat, and the dude next to him was like, brother. And the Sinky was like, hey, that's no brother, that's some white man. Huh? See? Just because he's got the same skin don't mean that he got the same mind or heart as like you. You mean to tell me nothing in himself realized to be like, look, man, take her over to the room, let her go air out, you know, bring her a snack or something, let her, you know, rest of the day, you gonna sit there and do. Matter of fact, don't they got them detention rooms? Little rooms all to the damn side? You know, ride 100 times, remember the I will not, you know how to do that? You know, shit, I had to do that shit back in the day, 25 on one page, 25 on another. You got to know how many lines on the paper, because you were doing that shit, right? So what's wrong in this individual not understanding that this is a little child, man? Ain't nothing for you to go ahead and traumatize this young girl. The damage you might have done to her, man, you know, you're not gonna know until later on in life. Yeah, you got fired, but they said that particular day he had already got 2 that day. And matter of fact, it also read that it was a 6,000, and they said once they found out that he thought she was 8, and when he said she was 6, you know what he said? He said, oh, you break the record. What? He said, oh, I broke the record. This is the youngest one I ever had arrested. So that tells me that, you know, all screws and marbles in one head did not work. But for some odd reason, when people get these jobs, they lose a lack of compassion and understanding, and it's all about the black and white on the paper. I lose all sympathy and respect for my own, yet, as Bloomberg just told you prior, and now he tries to apologize for it, that what we were doing were wrong. Then if that's a wrong, then how many other things are wrong as well, right? It might be wrong too, right? So, Bloomberg being a mayor, giving the orders to stop and frisk certain modus operandi, talking about a certain ethnicity of people, group of people, certain age group, and they all fit regardless to what you're really looking for. They all gonna fit. Then you get somebody in the capacity of school. I mean, a 6-year-old. This is a baby. And you put babies in handcuffs and haul them off, fingerprint them, not Photoshop, take their photo, then talking about we're going to drop the charges, and we're going to expunge your record at 6. So, pipeline to prisons, is that not something real in a lot of people's mind? And, a lot of people were upset when they looked at the movie Harriet. I haven't seen it yet. I'll wait till it come on cable. I'm paying cable, right? So I'll wait till it come on there, right? But anyway, they were talking about, in Harriet, they said that the patty roll, the overseer, was a black man in Harriet. A lot of people was like, well, where the hell did you get that part in the story from? What black man was an overseer? A patty roll. Well, you got them just like this cat right here in the modern day. Could there have been one? It's possible. It's possible. You remember in Life? Hopping Bob? I don't want to be so nice like Captain Boss. I come in and set the black off here. Remember he was all that, right? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So we be having people who willing to raise their hand. I'll do it, boss. Right? Right? So just keep this all in mind here, right? Keep it all in mind, right? So now let's show. I'm gonna show you something here. What I'm about to show you here is you think this ain't real? You might think, oh man, that's this will blow your mind. You be exaggerating. Really? Be exaggerating, right? Okay. Well, let me see if this is going to be an exaggeration, right? Let me see if this is going to be an exaggeration. Because I want you to see this, because the reason why you need to see this part here, the reason why you need to see this part right here, is because if the mayor can set out a program and a kid could be in school at 6 years old and somebody who works for the same institution like the mayor is implementing, then what about if you go before the judge and the judge feels a certain kind of way? Maybe you didn't hear about that, but you're going to hear it right here. Breaking news right here from Louisiana. You want to hear it? We ready to do this? Go ahead, let's get it.
Reflective of my personality. I have many African American friends. I know that I am not a racist.
In a 9 News exclusive, a judge admits using racial slurs in these text messages, but stands firm she will not step down. Thanks for being with us. I'm Scotty Hunter. Judge Jessie LeBlanc is in the fight of her life. There are calls for her to step down amid racial slurs and an extramarital affair. Today, she agreed to sit down with me for an exclusive interview, the judge agreeing to our terms that no topics were off limits. Judge Jessie LeBlanc is facing mounting criticism and demands for her to call it quits after admitting to an affair with then Chief Deputy of Assumption Parish, Bruce Prejean, and now for allegedly sending these text messages laced with profanity and racial slurs.
I know that I am not a racist.
The texts are graphic. At several points, she admits to using the N-word about 3 times, referring to a law enforcement officer and a court employee, also calling the black deputy a thug. Judge LeBlanc agreed to talk exclusively to WAFB days after those messages were made public. She's now admitting she did, in fact, send them. Do you deny sending those?
I admit that I used that word. I profusely apologize for that. I should have never said it. It was uncalled for. I was angry, I was upset, but it's no excuse.
Have you used that particular racial slur in the past?
Not in a, no, I have not used that racial slur in the past. No, I have not used that racial slur in the past.
The judge tells me this is an isolated incident and her use of the N-word was during a heated argument with her former lover. She says the 8-year affair with the chief deputy ended in 2016. The texts were sent after they broke off the relationship. While she does admit to sending the text, she has a problem with how they were presented, saying she believes the messages have been altered.
Some of those messages are not in their entirety.
Altered.
Some of those messages are not in their entirety. Some of those messages have been altered. Messages are not in their entirety. Some of those messages have been altered. And so while, yes, I admit that I said that, I want to be clear that those messages do not reflect the entirety of the conversations.
Are you able to provide further context then if that's the case?
I don't. I don't have that. But in looking at the documents themselves, you can see where they don't correlate.
She should be removed from the bench.
Local NAACP President Eugene Collins is leading the charge, demanding the judge step down, and says every case she's presided over in the past should be in question.
This is about creating a fair and impartial system, and somebody using those type of terms in text message to a chief deputy, that person, I don't want reviewing the case of family members, community members, or anybody else.
LeBlanc stands behind her work on the bench and tells me her personal and professional life never crossed paths. In fact, she says other judges in the 23rd Judicial District knew about the affair. Things came to light, though, back in November when she declined to sign a warrant presented to her because Bruce Prejean's son, an undercover deputy, was involved in the case. LeBlanc cited a conflict of interest, asking another judge to sign the warrant.
That's how we got to this point.
The judge says since taking the bench, she's only presided over 2 criminal cases in Assumption Parish that have actually gone to trial, both of them jury trials. Never once
Did this interfere with my job. I never signed a warrant for Mr. Prejean. He never testified in a trial before me in his capacity as a sheriff's deputy. And I don't believe any of this would warrant any new trials in Assumption Parish.
Jill Kraft represents the judge and says while she condemns the racist actions, she does not believe LeBlanc should be removed from the bench.
It's terrible, and there's no excuse, zero excuse for anyone using that word and that language. My concern globally is one of where do you draw the line? Does that mean that every judge in the state has to sign an affidavit under oath that they've not used the N-word, or they haven't referred to women as the C word or the B word or gay people in a derogatory fashion? And if they have, are they automatically disqualified from any cases involving women, African Americans, Hispanics, gay people?
Both the judge and her attorney say they plan to have a conversation with the NAACP, but right now tell me she has no plans to step down.
I did call them that name. They do not deserve that. They deserve an apology from me, and I sincerely apologize.
You cannot deny the gravity of this situation, and the NAACP won't either. An apology is not enough.
Now, to be clear, none of LeBlanc's fellow judges she claims to have told about the affair had the authority to actually discipline her, even if they thought it was warranted. Only the state Supreme Court can do that. We posted our full interview with the judge. It's waiting for you right now on the 9 News app.
So we see in Louisiana, matter of fact, Assumption Parish, Louisiana. Assumption. Do you know that Assumption means that the feast of Virgin Mary getting into heaven, right? Assumption, right? All right. So we see a judge in Louisiana. Judge name is Jesse LeBlanc, right? What is that? Jesse the White? Oh, okay. All right, LeBlanc. Right. Okay. So we see that she's in the district court. She's a district court judge. And we see that according to this video here and also the report that was done, that she is admitted to using racial slurs and some text messages that she talked about a black sheriff and a law clerk, right? And as you've seen in the video, she admits she used that word, right? And you've seen the brother there, his name was Scotty Hunter that did the interview, right? So, you know, some people will say, oh man, you know, this racial words and stuff, ah man, that's nothing. And I might agree. Words in itself are not as detrimental than, let's say, the history of it, right? And the history of a person in a position, when you talk about racism and racists, and you know, some people don't agree that, and they say, well, black people can't be racist. They say, well, how come black people can't be racist? And according to our illustrious ancestor, Francis Cress Welsing, said that a racist is one who can determine, that has the power to determine, like, you know, where you live, where you work, right? You have a position of power to determine, to making a cause and effect in another person. Are there black people who have some monies, may own some properties, have businesses? Yes. So they do have the potential to be racist, but from our history in this country as B.A.D.O.S, that term has solely been on the other side due to the simple fact we have always been fighting, trying to gain equality, rights, what they say is an abstract thought, and other things, right? But when you have a person in a position who determines justice, right, wrong, innocence or guilt, and they show a display of biasness and using terms that come from a place that a lot of people hide, and as she said, as I get more into it, let me go ahead and show this here, right? So let me show you the article that it came from, right? That it was a 9 News exclusive. Louisiana Judge Jesse LeBlanc admits to using racial slur, apologizes, right? So you heard her, what she just said. And in the apology, she used the word, well, profusely, right? She's profusely apologizing, like somebody bleeding like that, right? But can't stop. I'm in remorse, so I can't stop, right? But there's 2 parts to this. There's a part of her using the slurs, and then she had an affair. The fair part, we don't care about that. People gonna be people, right? But the racial part and her being a judge is what we have to look at here. You want to pull that up for me, sir? Do we got it? Do we got it? Go ahead and put them up there, because that's the part we need down. Right, we need down. You got them? Oh, you're so slow today, sir. Wow, where they at? Wow, where they go? All right, so as you see on your screen there, those were the emails, right? And you can see the conversation as they're talking. It says, I guess this time or this era, or this ends with sour grapes too, and an inability to talk. It's okay. I'll be just fine. I see how you feel. I still your friend. And somebody says, friends don't call friends liars. I suppose we have different definitions of what a friend is. If Brianne makes you happy, good for you. I just feel sorry for your kids and grandkids. What an embarrassment. I'm not seeing Brianna or Brianne. At least I was never unfaithful to you with anyone, much less a nigger. Other side of it says goodbye. And you don't have to pretend we are friends in front of others or other people. I've also learned not to be fake. So if someone has a question, refer them to me. And if you feel the need to share my text messages, please share them also. They get the full story. I'm sure you are with Thug Nigger Eric. He is such a good friend. I can't wait till the day he is called out for what he is. Dirty cop, thug, nigger. Right? So those are the texts there that was supposedly that's coming from Judge LeBlanc. And so some people might hear the word nigger coming from white people and think just because the word of them saying nigger is where all the commotion is coming from. Yes, when white folks say the word nigger and the long implications and detriment that has come behind that word, it's not the word itself that is the issue here. As I was saying before about a racist, one who has the power to determine, obstruct, corrupt, and hinder, is a racist. So when a person is in the power of a judge, and what we would go through statistically in this country as to who is mostly incarcerated, when you have somebody who's sitting on the bench who uses language that, again, using obscenity is not really what I would, for myself, would think that somebody needs to not hold a position. If they're saying the F words, the shit word, those words like that. I mean, grown folks gonna say grown folks things. Sometimes what people say when you use those type of profanities of obscenities, it shows your lack of professionalism. Okay, let's say if that's true. But when you use the word niggers and you sit in a position of power, which really, based on the history and the creation of the justice system and the incarceration, the pipeline of prison, as we've seen the little girl who ended up going to the system at 6 years old. Yes, somebody of color actually helped, but somewhere between him there and them processing, I'm pretty sure there was somebody white somewhere. and nobody decided to do anything until after it got into the hand of the families and they went and did the necessary process to bring light to the situation. Just like Bloomberg was talking about stop and frisk. A person who can determine and have the malice in their heart and say things that just when they spoke it, they didn't have no thought about what they said. But when somebody else is looking from the outside and evaluating it and can tell where this part of your speech is coming from, then guess what? Now you held accountable for it. You held accountable for that. So, as in that interview you heard her say, as they all say, right? We hear that all the time. I have black friends, as making the reference of having black friends somehow equates that you say nigger to them. You must say it to them, right? Or maybe it's just a simple fact that those black friends that you have, you don't consider them niggers. You know, it's kind of like saying there's certain people. Matter of fact, remember in the movie Do the Right Thing when, what was his name? From Sal's, the son from Sal's Pizza, and Spike Lee was having that conversation. And they was going through who was his favorite. And he was talking about Prince and, you know, he was talking about people who he liked that seemed to be black. But what did he say? Well, they're not niggers. They're black, but they're not niggers. So that means that white folks look at black people not so much as because you're black, but they have another determining factor, as I've always said about the book that I told y'all that if you can get your hands on called The Golden Stools, that the missionaries were talking about in order for black people to be acceptable by white folks, you would have to become a black white person, right, in order for you to be accepted by them. So that means if somebody like Jesse LeBlanc, who says, I have black friends, don't mean that black is the same black as like you and I. These blacks have a different quality. They're the ones that they say, you're kind of special. You're different from the rest. That kind of black. The ones that we'll see who have a job and a position and see a little black girl at 6 years old who has no compassion when he looks at self, but the job comes first, and I have to do my job to make sure that they know that I'll risk even my own to show you I'm not biased in my job, as if like when white folks have situations when they come to with cops, what is the percentage of them walking away and nobody being arrested because it becomes a white thing? So these are the kind of black people who be your friends, the ones that make you feel comfortable and will turn and cut on black folks. It's kind of like what we done seen the situation about when the reporter who came on after that January 26th, and the report came out, and she tried to come out and say that she was talking about, you know, the death of Kobe Bryant, and she came out with the niggers, Los Angeles niggers, and then later on tried to turn it around and try to say, well, she tried to say Knicks and Lakers at the same time and say Nakers. Well, I seen the damn video too, for y'all who might remember that Wheel of Fortune cartoon, and the word was N blank GGER, right? And that I wish I could have played it. I should have played it, but I didn't play it. But anyways, you might have seen it. If not, go check it out. And based on what you see, N blank GGER S, I think it was, right? You, from your from the psychological aspect of you looking at that word, because when they showed the cartoon, they had a cameraman with a black man, and he peeked around the camera like, no, he ain't about to say what I think he about to say. And so you would assume that that word was niggers. But the word was nagers. So this to me is what they seem to be playing on, trying to say, oh, I meant to say niggers. Like that Wheel of Fortune, yeah, right, parody, right? Okay, whatever. Okay. Well, okay, that's the game y'all be playing. But anyway, but let's look at the context of this conversation. Again, I don't think nobody is tripping about the affair. That's y'all business between you, your husband, him and his wife. That's y'all situation. That doesn't, to me, have any effect about your job, other than the fact that it's something personal with him and you in a situation in the courtroom, and there was some, biases being done and favors being done, and then that would be different. But to say that whoever this Brianne is, which is the other person he was sleeping with, that she was black. Now again, she's married. He's married. You know what I'm saying? You already done signed yourself to make yourself the side piece. I guess maybe hoping that he was going to leave and you was going to leave, but it didn't work out. And he got him a new piece, but she was black. Now let's look at the context of what she said here. Now she says, if Brianna makes you happy, all right, so she's in a place of her mind that this bothers her, that she bringing it up in the conversation, right? And she said, good for you, right? Like, it doesn't bother me that you're with this, this person, Brianne, right? But she goes on to slight him and throw shade at him. Now, look, wait a minute. Here I am. I'm white. I'm hot. I'm white. I'm a judge, right? And to make him feel bad about the decision he messing with her over her, and that she's black, she says, I just feel sorry for your kids and your grandkids. Now, wait a minute. What does that got to do with it? Wouldn't they have aren't they going to feel bad when they find out that granddad was cheating on grandma with you? Is there any difference between, because you're white? You're white. She's black. But if he's cheating, as long as he stay within the race. Now, a lot of y'all who don't want to play that game, listen to what she's saying here. She's saying, hey, I'm white. You're white. And if you're going to do this, keep it white. But now you went fucked up. You went over here and fucked with the nigger. Right? And I hope your grandkids, I feel sorry for you. Right? She feels sorry for you, your kids and your grandkids. So she was trying to get into a place to make you feel some kind of way, to feel emotional about it, right? He says, and then she says, what an embarrassment. Huh? What did she mean by when she said, what an embarrassment? That white people messing with kind of like the help, playing with the animals, sleeping with the animals, right? She mean this in a derogatory way. She's saying this as if saying, you belittled yourself when you stoop down and start messing with niggas. That's what she's saying, right? That's what she's saying. You're stooping yourself down. And so he goes on and he says, well, I'm not seeing Brianne. Like, if he is, he think he's going to admit it. Because maybe he's still kind of, he want to still come back and do this. I mean, she in a position, some favors. He's maybe trying to keep the lines open. Right? And then she goes on to say, at least I was never unfaithful to you with anyone. See? So she's hurt by the fact that, one, all right, let's look at her situation. Again, like I said, I don't care about the affair, but let's just look at what she's saying here. Here I am, a judge, a white woman who got a white man. Here's you, a white man, right? Who got a family like I do. And I was willing to risk it all for you. And if I'm going to, leave, at least I'm going to stay, birds of the feather going to flock together. But you went and messed with a nigger. So you're an embarrassment to white folks. This is what she's saying. You're an embarrassment to white folks. So if those who think that that's not how white folks think, that's right there on your screen. when a white person mess with a black person, now am I saying all? I'm not saying all. But even those who might hear me even know that that's how those who in their family who think like that. I mean, let's just go back to 50s and the 60s. When they talk about disowning you, if they ever found out that you was with one, that they would take you out of the will, disown you, take your plaque, all that away like you never did exist, right? So that's what she's saying here, right? And then she goes into saying, well, I was never unfaithful to her. So wait a minute. Here I am cheating with you, then I'm cheating on my husband, and then you're going to cheat on me with somebody else, and then it's a nigger, right? And that's what she said, a nigger. So not just a nigger in the statement about that Brianna or Brianne. She said he's an embarrassment because he's why? He's fucking with a nigger, right? Okay. Then on the other part of it says, right? She says, and somebody says goodbye, and you don't have to pretend we are friends in front of people. Okay, go down. And then it says, this part here says, I'm sure you are with thug nigger Eric. Okay. We got to go ahead and get this out. We got to get this out, you know? Because that word be used, and we done even heard even President Obama use that word, right? So let's go ahead. Let me give you know, Mr. Blows Your Minds. I get into the words as well, right? So let me go into the etymological word of thug. Do you know what it says when you look at the etymology of the word of thug? Okay? Thug is going to tell you this. You ready? All right. Thug is a Hindu word. All right? A thug is a Hindu word. Matter of fact, they say that it is also kind of like, I guess you say, it's a cheat, a swindler. Used instead of the correct name, a fansiger, right? A fansiger, which is a strangler, right? That's the etymology word, right? So, you know, again, what I do, I have another one, the word origins, right? And I'm going to take it to the word origin. But before I do that, let me give you something else. Hold on. Let's do this right? You got to do it right? Do it right? All right, so let's do it right. So, when I say the word thug, let me give you all the synonyms to that word thug. So let's get a clear understanding. When anytime you hear white folks say this word thug, you will know what they're talking about. Or if you even hear a black person who seems to be trying to cape, what do they say, right? They're caping for the other side, right? So we're going to say thug is a desperado. That's what a thug is a desperado. A terrorist. A gunman. A gangster. Criminal. Mafioso, right? A mugger. A ruffian. A hoodlum, right? A hooligan, right? A robber, a highwayman, a footpad. That must be an old term, right? A bandit, right? It's an assassin, a murderer, a killer, slayer, sniper, strangler. It goes into a hired gun, a hitman, a hatchet man, a trigger man, right? So those are all is also with that too, right? Let me give you some other, because see, again, in order for you to have the tools to understand, when you consider yourself to be a whiteologist, you have to understand where they're coming from. So let me, again, went into my library, pulled out something. Now check this out. Now this is thug. Wicked word, right? So it's really a wicked word. It says a thug is a ruffian or tough, a hoodlum. Okay? It says the word thug derives from the Hindi thag, which is thief, swindler, and was popularized by the thugs of India. I'm going to say that again. Was popularized by the thugs of India. Closely knit gangs with the trappings of religious cults who made their living by killing and robbing travelers. Because they murdered people by strangling them, they also were known as Fancingians, which is noose operators. They were hanging them too. So stranglers also mean hangmen, right? They was hanging you. They flourished from at least the 14th century until the early 1830s, when the British conducted a vigorous campaign to eradicate them. It was at about this time that the word entered English in its modern sense. The earliest example of being from Thomas Carlyle's reference to the Gasclow thugs, right? The first example in English of the similar also comes from Gasclow, which is goons, right? You think about that. You hear a lot of these terms, right? You hear a lot of these terms today, right? Again, you heard the word a thug is also a gangster, right? Now, word origin, I got one more for you, right? Thug is an ancient gangster. I'm going to say that again. Thug, an ancient gangster, from the Hindustani word thag, a cheat, which is term derives from a Sanskrit sidhaga, which is cheat from stahag, conceal. These East Indian thugs operated until about 100 years ago, like modern gangsters that had their fingermen, who spotted the victim when these thugs were informed by their spies that a man of property was about to take a journey. They followed him until he arrived at some lonely spot, and then, like our modern muggers, they strangled and robbed him. It was all presumed to be done in the honor of their goddess, Kali. But this ancient murder syndicate profited handsomely by the service of their faith, and their brutality gave us our word, thug. Okay? So that is about thug, right? So thug and nigger, right? Now, let's say, according to what I got here, it talks about the word nigger, right? So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up for you just in case, somebody would say, well, nigger. Okay, well, let's go with what it says. Now, according to Wicked Words, it says that a nigger is a black person unless otherwise qualified. I'm going to say that again. A black person unless otherwise qualified, as in Arabs were called sand niggers. In discussions about the State Department issue in the Middle East, recalling dissensions in the Reagan administration during the tenure as Secretary of Education in 1981 to 84, New York Times is October 21st of 1987. And in the primary sense today, Borrego Springs, California residents have forgotten or have never known that once this place was known as Nigger Springs. It was called that in the 1870s after a black man named Jim Green, who lived and explored in the valley, Borrego Sons, which is March 2nd, 1989. Nigger was once a fairly commonplace name. It had been replaced in most instances by Negro, as in Negro Mountains, Maryland, Negro Head Mountains, California. Meanwhile, the newer, nicer name of the desert town of Baringo is Spanish for lamb. The term was used generally in the American Southwest when referring to the sheep and appears in other place names, Baringo, Aurora, New Mexico. Nigger itself is a prime example of how a word meaning depends on context. Among most educated white people today, this is a hateful term, rarely employed. Yet among blacks, it continues to be used casually, often approvingly. Thus, discussing the word nuance for blacks, in the singular, the word was always applied to a man who had distinguished himself in some situation that brought my family's approval for his strength, intelligence, or drive. Did Johnny really do that? I'm telling you, that nigger pulled in $6,000 overtime last year. Said he got enough from a down payment on a house. When used with a possessive adjective by a woman, my nigger, it becomes a term of endearment for a husband or boyfriend in the plural. It became a description of some groups within the community that had overstepped the bounds of decency as my family defined it. Parents who neglected their children, a drunken couple who fought in public, people who simply refused to look for work, those with excessively dirty mouths or unkept households were all trifling niggers. Oh, this is long, man. It's a lot. See, again, if you gonna be a whiteologist, you got to have the tools. Somebody's not gonna tell you this, right? Do you want the rest? I'll say for him. So now I got, there's about 2-3 more pages of that. Niggas deep, right? So, if a judge is using that, and then the context, as it said, when you use the word nigger in context, then look at the context of these emails that are being stated. Then, when the question was asked to her, when that brother, what was his name? What was that brother name that did the interview? What was his name? I can't remember. What was his name? Okay. I can't think of the brother's name that did the interview. But anyway, he had asked her, has she ever used the word, right? She asked, did he use the word? Has she ever used the word? Right? Has she ever used the word before, right? She starts stumbling. She said, I have not used the racial slur in the past, right? She was trying to say she used it, but not in the way that she said it in the context, but she knows no matter how you slice it, it was going to come up nigga, right? So she had to be like, no, I never said it before. Now, we know damn well, if you said nigga in the text, you done said nigga amongst your friends, okay? That's what it is, right? We know this is what you did, right? So, okay. So, she says that she admit that she used that word, but she says, but the way they presented it, she believed that they altered it. It's not in its entirety. Now that sounds to me like Gayle King when that whole situation broke with her after she did the interview with Lisa Leslie. Then she's, at the beginning when it first came out and everybody seen that, then she blamed CBS and say that they had altered the video, that if you go back and watch the entirety, it had nothing to do. It don't matter whether I see the entirety. I just need the part that what you just said. Address what you just said. We don't care about the whole rest of that. What about that part? That was the part that pissed everybody off. And so we see the same thing being stated here. Well, the context. So I believe it's altered. Well, I don't still have all my evidence to prove it, but I'm just going to say this is what took place, right? So again, this is really, she said don't correlate and all that. Okay, so anyway, it's not so much about just saying the word nigger. it's a white person who has the power to determine on black people that can make life hard and again have a power to determine and prohibit and all that stuff. That's where the problem comes in it. And so when you have a person like that who is, people are going to jail, because I think she said something about there was only two people who only went to trial, but what that supposed to mean? That's the only time you adjudicated, cases was just them 2 trials. About the rest of the stuff, I guess we won't talk about that, right? So, but I did see this, what it says, let's see, do I got that? Yeah, I got that. Okay, let me do this. So it looks like that, based on what she said, I don't know what's going on. You're a little slow over there, right? What's going on? Okay. Put that up there. All right. So, Coroner says hundreds of N-word judges cases reviewed over racist text controversy, right? So just imagine you had a judge that is deemed to be racist. Can you say that your judge was not biased in your case when we know that they're talking about pipelines to prison, niggas getting gangs of time for, crimes that other people do that seem to get lesser time? So when this comes up, then I guess it is a big deal, because I ain't gonna say I guess it is a big deal because no one can read behind your head. We hear the words that are coming out one's mouth, but we can't determine if all your actions were based solely on the merit of the case. There could be bias in there. And so you see that they're now going to start reviewing and going back, and those who had cases dealing with her, that's what's going to end up happening, right? So, all right. So that's how that went, right? So let me show you this part now, right? Let me go ahead and get in here, right? Let's see. We got it ready? I know, because we kind of messed up on that one, didn't you? You messed up on that one, didn't you? Let's just hope everything is all good. Let's see. See if everything good on there. It should be, right? Let's see how it's going. Is it working? Check it out. I know. See, it's kind of slowing up over there, right? All right, it's warming up. So, this one here, yeah, this is it. This is it. All right. So, what I'm about to show you next here, again, all this is connected into the theme, which is we talked about originally with Bloomberg, and what he's talking about, the stop and frisk, and we looked at how he said what he said. We seen a little girl, 6 years old, be arrested for attention tantrum, fingerprint, mugshot, taken in handcuffs, taken in the police car, had to get a case expunged. Wait a minute. How did you get a charge to get how do you get expunged if you didn't get charged? I don't understand that. Well, anyway, then we see that a judge has admitted the fact that in her text, what she has said, and people trying to hold her feet to the fire to say, you know what, I don't think you can be a fair judge, even though you say you got black friends and you're not a racist from your definition, understanding of it, and it's taken out of context. But if you look at the context of it, it ain't just the nigger, that the word that you said, it's the way how you're looking at it. Again, you said an embarrassment to another white man, a white man. So it's embarrassment that he's messing with a black woman. So that means that you have some kind of not feeling good about black people, right? So now check this out that just came out. Check this out. All right, so let me go ahead. We're going to crank that up. Going to crank it up and let's go ahead and get it. Let's check this out.
Police departments are turning to big data to help reduce crimes in their neighborhoods. The systems use algorithms to analyze historical crime data to predict where crimes will occur or who might commit them. But critics say that using the data can actually reinforce biased police practices from the past. The first episode of CBSN Original's new series, Reverb, dives into this issue. Here's a preview.
There was Jim Crow, segregation, broken windows, Comstat, and now we are in the era of data-driven, precision-based policing. Yet it still remains the same, the banishment of black and brown and poor people.
Data-driven policing, is there an appropriate place for that in society?
Absolutely. I mean, we can't go back. The real question isn't as much around whether it's appropriate, but how data is collected, how data is used, who's involved in the collection of that data, who is it shared with.
You see the helicopter all day, every day? Wherever the helicopter, that's where I'm going, because I need to know if that's my son they got over there.
We call our kids and FaceTime them so we can put them at the time and the place, so they can't put robbery charges on them.
Take a picture of their location.
You got to. Our words gets.
So you basically have to have an alibi like all the time.
Yes. We just want justice. We need them to know from right from wrong.
All right, so let's bring in CBSN Originals correspondent and executive producer Adam Yamaguchi to talk about this. So Adam, I don't think a lot of people even sort of realize that this sort of software has sneakily made its way into sort of law enforcement. So it's called predictive policing software. Why are police departments turning to this?
So there are a number of policing software tools that are at the disposal of authorities. And the big promise from a distance sounds great. We want to eliminate crime before it even is committed. Right. And the idea is we have so much data. We leave data trails with us all the time.
Yes.
If I were to pick apart all the data trails that you leave behind, I could probably paint a disturbingly good portrayal of who you might be.
I was going to say, and make me shudder, I'm sure, yeah.
But the idea is, if you have a record, or if you have certain proclivities, and you might be suspicious of being involved in a crime, then I can help piece that information together and potentially find out who did it, or if someone is inclined to commit this crime.
Sounds like the plot of a movie. So when we talk about these algorithms, I mean, we have learned this, that algorithms may appear to be non-biased, but they're created by humans that have their own biases. But also, particularly when it comes to policing, the data that is collected, as we saw in that little snippet, often there is a bias in the way the data is collected. So that has an impact on these algorithms too.
Absolutely, and that's the critical piece of all of this.
Yeah.
You create an algorithm that takes in data and then spits out a recommendation. That's what the software essentially is.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds fine,
Mm-hmm.
right? The problem is communities of color, black communities, brown communities, have historically been over-policed.
Mm-hmm.
And so the data that you have, that you're feeding into the system, is already inherently biased, because that's where all the police, all the resources have previously been. And that's where all the crime supposedly is. So you feed this bad data into the system, well, you're going to get bad data out.
And are we actually seeing that? Are we seeing these communities that are historically sort of more targeted, that premise being reinforced by the software?
Right. Here's the tricky thing. It's hard to tell at this point. These tools have been available for the last few years, and police departments are learning essentially as they go. I mean, the general public and by and large, communities of color are sort of the guinea pigs. Now, when you have a system that has historically incarcerated more people of color, proportionately, and that's we're continuing to see that. It's hard to say whether this is because of the crime, or because of these tools. So it's very, very tricky.
Yeah, and so I know that this series is going to explore all the different ways that sort of various technologies are being used. What other ways are law enforcement or police departments using technology, and what's the future?
Well, the big scary one is the face.
Yes, we were just talking about that. Yeah.
Facial recognition is the future.
Yeah.
And it started a few years ago very sort of innocuously, right? You wanted a way to unlock your phone. Well, now your face is being used in all sorts of ways, whether it's boarding an airplane or whatnot. But bear in mind that if you walk the streets of New York, Chicago, there are police cameras or there are surveillance cameras everywhere. And all that data, again, I could place you from the moment you step out of your house to the moment you get back home. I can know where you are. And if you think about the ramifications of that, all the places where you're photographed during the day, that's a powerful tool, which can be useful, but could also net people incorrectly. I mean, one of the inherent flaws of this surveillance camera and the artificial intelligence that is used to sort of decipher who is it that I'm seeing, it's sometimes flawed. And again, people of color have been misidentified by these cameras and by the software.
So it's like, do you trust your government? Do you trust law enforcement? Do you trust industry to have this access to all this information and not abuse it?
And a lot of this data is stuff that we give up because of convenience or because we're somehow so fixated on whether it's social media or other tools.
Well, I think about all these people who are very concerned about their privacy, and so they avoid social media. There's no avoiding it anymore.
You would have to live in a cabin in the woods all alone and never come out.
Right, totally.
All right, so we are back, right? So, predictive-based policing, right? So they talk about big data, right? Algorithms, they say, to analyze what will occur or who will commit them, right? So they saying predictive, they gonna get you on the whim of a thought that you even have that spirit, mindset, or just look suspicious based on the data we have on you and a crime that didn't occur, we can suspect that you're gonna do it. Right? All right, maybe you heard, maybe you didn't hear this, right? So they said using this can reinforce biases from the past, right? Again, we talking about black people. Now, when you talk about crime, look at what Bloomberg said. 95% of your murderers, and those who are victims of murder are in black minority communities. Now, when they say minority communities, and when they start talking about these statistics, is this also including immigrants, right? Because they kind of like get their own little community when they get here, right? Those who've been here for a while, they end up getting a section. Do they have crime? Are they considered to be in that 95% when you talk about murdered, and victims of murder? Or is that just strictly, B.A.D.O.S? And so based on, the Chinese Magachi, I think his name was Magachi, I think his name was, right? Let's look at the data that they're using. Now here we just, again, I did the video not to a couple shows back when they were doing the Democratic debate And the candidates were all talking about how the justice system is broke and how it needs to be, revamped and redone, and the policies are race-based. So we're going to take this same data from it and create this system that you call predictive-based policing and think that it's not going to be biased, right? So, again, as B.A.D.O.S in this country, in the history that, again, talking about Jim Crow, there's also about Constad, right? You had segregation. They had a project called Broken Windows, right? They also had precision-based policing, right? Which is basically another one I think was called Operation Impact, right? It was something that they talk about that too, right? And what this is basically, according to what they were saying in this clip, was about the banishment of people of color. Now, when they say people of color, that's inclusive of everything that would be considered black, right? Now, again, we know when we say black, those from who are cut from the cloth, when we say black, we're talking about we as the family who were cut from what our ancestors been in here, bled, sweat, and died, and built. When they say people of color, that's inclusive of everything that they don't consider to be white in their classification. So now what they're saying is that this is a data-driven policing. And what's funny that, have you ever noticed that sometimes when they're talking about certain things that we know that are strictly pertaining to us, these days they don't have white folks actually saying it. Y'all ever noticing that lately? That they get black folks to say things that that you're going to have somebody in there who's going to take side for mastering them, right? And so here it is, again, it's just my job. It's kind of like Gayle King doing the interview, talking about Kobe and talking about what pissed everybody off and thought it was not appropriate. She used the kickstand to say, hey, it's just my job, right? So it being just your job, just like you seen that sister in here doing the report, not the one that was sitting in the studio, but the one that was talking about the data with the Chinese dude then. They had her to sit there, again, because that's going to be a couple of mine that see, we kind of need this. I'm black, and I wouldn't be saying that this is good, but this is what she said. Remember what she said? She said, this is data-driven policing, and is there a place for it? She says, yes. We can't go back. Yeah, you can't go back, right? Because if you go back, right, the improficiency of it, right? So you need the proficiency of it. Because, again, that's what this was built on. Now, again, that was a video that I had created that I didn't put out, right? I didn't put it out due to the simple fact that I had gotten caught up doing some other stuff and never put it out. But I kind of told you a little bit about it. So let me show you that an article had came up about this. Again, just a couple days ago. Let's see if I got it. Do we got that? We got it. Do we got that? Yeah, we got it. All right. So I was telling y'all about, when you talk about technology and the origins of technology and how Silicon Valley and drugs are synonymous, because trying to come up with who could come up with the next greatest ideal about how to compile data, right? So drugs supposed to heighten up one's, vision so that they can, be experimenting and coming up with ideals because you're high, right? And in that I didn't show y'all, talked about how Silicon Valley, during the same time when we're talking about the crack era and the cocaine, and how Silicon Valley was kind of like a hub for where a lot of drugs was coming through. So it also talked about how Freeway Ricky, again, when they was talking about making all that money, you would think that, damn, how could you make those kind of millions of dollars a day? We understand black people can come up with money when they really need some shit, right? We know that, right? But I don't know if we got that kind of millions of dollars up in the hood like that. But the connecting part to it was the fact that they were in Silicon Valley. And what Silicon Valley was creating the database, and the database was based on, because of the 60s, the Negro problem. And trying to have data on everybody, especially of those particular times. So let's look at where it is today. And as this sister was talking about social media, right? And so I seen this article, right? Let me show you this. I seen this article here that was talking about Silicon Valley's so white. Black Facebook and Google employees speak out on big tech racism. And what they're talking about is those who become, whether they working for Google or Facebook, and that, that as a profession, because it is so, the numbers are so white compared to the few blacks that work there, that a lot of times they treat them like, like they don't belong there. I ain't gonna say they sometimes, according to what they've been saying, they don't belong there. They ask them for ID, or are you lost, or can I help you? That kind, and so they're speaking out about it. But the truth of the matter is, the history of it is that it was not designed. So, it's kind of like the brand new ones today. I understand about having optimism and trying to be positive and want to be, you're not going to be like those before. Again, until you understand how this whole thing goes, then that's just how you look at shit. But you infiltrating into places is only there for you to be able to utilize your skills, right? Your talents. Remember Nebuchadnezzar, the Bible, right? Take all your choicey talents and apply your skills and abilities in exchange for this money we will give you to allow you to be, not on the plantation, but we're going to have you on the side of Master House, the Stedman House that Oprah, when Ice Cube was talking about going to build the Stedman House in the back. Well, that's where you live at, right? And you assume because of your fraternization, because you somehow get educated and got degrees, that this somehow, as it talked about nigger, right? Nigger, unless you are, not classified, right? That's when you become, he's my friend, I got black friends. But then there's some of them who are diehards, who understand what this is all about. And seeing you there and knowing that they could just say whatever, they ain't like they gonna hold on to you, but then the biases are there, because the bias in itself, the way it was created, was that what it was for. It never seen you. It's kind of like the Constitution. When the Constitution was written, it wasn't talking about you. They had to add you in later. And now we try to say that is about us. And it's like they added you in. So that means when they originally was sitting down, they never thought about you. So now that you have people who are trying to get into, technology, you still got to go work for people who don't like you. So as long as you're asking them for something to get in, to be a part of, then this is their rules. And if you don't like it or learn to like it, then get the hell out. That's how they looking at it, right? And so I understand, based on our position we've been in, collectively, could you get black people who could do technology? But again, you still, the way that the game is locked up and you've been locked out, a lot of people think just because you got the money that you can just create your own, but still don't think that whatever you build, who you getting your parts and pieces and the construction for it from? Even if you try to get all black, there's going to be a part where you're going to hit a wall. And so that's where they got you locked out the game at, right? And so just looking at this, that's what that was the whole creation of Silicon Valley. Database. So when we look at it today, as you heard in the video, they're talking about, basically, you got cameras, you walking around with a camera. Cameras are all around you. You see what they're trying to do now by having those cameras on every house, and that was helping for police. And then they've been, breaking a lot of stories lately showing that how, because people had those cameras on their houses, they were able to, whether save somebody who was, didn't know where they were, and catching, criminals and all kinds of stuff. I seen one today catching mugs that was the Amazon packages and shit like that. So they what they're doing, they enticing, they propagandizing that, but which is mean they're going to be able to have surveillance no matter where you go, right? You already got a low jack on you. You're already on house arrest, right? Think about that. You're already on that. And so, they said, as he said, that this technology is getting down to face recognition. I remember some years back when they was doing it, I think they already had this. By the time it gets to the public, they done already went through the ins and outs. This ain't new technology. They already went through the ins and outs. I was seeing a couple of years ago where they was showing going in the mall and people's tags was popping up on their heads. They was able to already, identify who you were. Now you probably, well, how did they did that? Well, I remember reading about something called smart dust. Right? Smart dust, some stuff that came up out of the sky that had some transmitters in it, and then you inhaling it, breathing it's in you. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff out here, right? A lot of that stuff they've been talking about for years, right? This ain't nothing new. So, so that's where that black software, I was talking about that too, that black software. Well, in here they talking about the software that become predictive policing software. Predictive, right? So they had, I remember some years back when I was reading about when they was talking about when you go in them airports, they have what they call, I think it's called biometric devices, right? Which is being able to read, right? Kind of read you, right? If you come in there and that detector reads off like, like you suspicious of something about, your spirit or, they got that already. Let's just look at some of the facets of the shit that they got. They got chemical, right? When you're talking about from chemical, which is what? Your DNA, right? So they got visual, which is they use your face and your eyes, right? They got behaviors, right? They got it down to where they can detect by the way you walk. I remember they were talking about license plate readers, that they could use a drone from way up in the sky that would be able to detect, you, right? Then they also have one called, I think it's called olfactory. I think olfactory, right? Which is odor. Like, as much as people try to keep themselves cleansed, right? You try, sometimes put the cologne and perfume on, or, some of them women, y'all got some of that seductive stuff on you, right? And, they even have that where they'll be able to identify you on your smell, right? Then they got auditory. See? You don't see Mr. Blowsurmind face, but you got his voice. You get what I'm saying? And so it's just becoming a police surveillance everywhere. So there's nowhere really to hide. And they're going to use all this data that's going to do, as they say, algorithm. Let's talk about that algorithm. Look at what they do to Mr. Blowsurmind's channel. The algorithm is programmed because, again, just like the sister in the CBS studio said, well, wait a minute. Some people just believe when they say algorithm, like the computer, and it just has no mind of its own and it's doing its own. No, it's been programmed by humans. And if humans are biased, then the system is going to be biased. How many of y'all was around when I did that show when it talked about how the so-called technology is biased to black people? That they make it where as a matter of fact, the people who was inputting the data to using the face reading was basically putting the same face. So that means that all black people were the damn same. As a matter of fact, I think Detroit was fighting that, right? They was fighting all that. And so, they got so much data that based on they can trail you at all times, right? Think about it. People been on Facebook, they give all their pictures, they mark, I'm at the restaurant and your phone is tracked, all that, man. So you seen that one part in there where the sisters who were concerned, right? Because they had the ghetto birds in the neighborhood, right? And they know when they see that ghetto birds in there, they know there's a sign of trouble, that somebody's relative is being sought after by the ghetto bird. And so what they do is they say the old saying is a pound of prevention is a pound of cure. Knowing where your children are. That used to be a thing back in the day. You had to check in, right? You just can't be just rumming and rolling outside all day. You had to check in. Mom, I'm all good. Dad, I'm all good. Come in, you know, you had street lights, but then even other times you just checking in. Let's say it's a Saturday. You got up bright early that one. You was out by before 9 o'clock. So you better be back in by somewhere about 12:01, get some lunch. That's kind of a check-in. You know, you come in and eat. I've been out, been ripping and running, hitting the streets. Come back in, let's show them all good. Then go back out after that. I'll be back again by street lights if I don't come in before then, right? But in this day and age, they're using the technology. As you seen them sisters that was sitting there talking about, they was like, you know, we need to do this so that, you know, the Chinese do say, well, you always need an alibi. They said, well, yeah, we got to have, you know, records because if they get scooped up, they got to, you know, this is going to be their pound of, again, this prevention measure that they're using by taking FaceTime, having documented that again and where they at and who they with, so that when they go to the police station, they ain't going to tell you what they heard. They're going to tell you what they know. I'm going to say that again. They ain't not going to go to the police station talking about what they heard. They're going to go in there and tell them what they know. And that may be the difference between your child, your son, that's going back to Bloomberg, between 15 and 25, being picked up and given a life sentence for something that they may not did, and it's taking 30, 40 years for them to fight it, to find out, oh, sorry, it wasn't you, right? And so, it goes on, it talks about records and certain proclivities. Like, if you fit a certain, again, like Bloomberg said, modus operandi. Remember, he said you could just take that description and Xerox copy and give it to any police, and he pretty much could pick out who it is that's going to fit that, and it's going to pretty much, your MO is going to fit that. Right? So they're going to say this database is going to be able to read the, compile all your data that's going to spit out a type. And if it matches you, we can bring you in just on suspicion because you fit the match to the type of the crime area and so forth. Ain't that something predictive? I thought you're innocent till you're proven guilty. You're guilty until you're proven innocent, huh? They need to change that off the wall, right? So anyway, and goes on to talks about more about what it talks about. I just want to bring that to your attention. There's a little bit more in there. But, I'm going to leave some stuff for y'all to, ponder over, leave, comments and messages and stuff like that. But there you go. Predictive-based policing. Just because, like a lottery, or ever watch Parking Wars, when they go by a hot car, right? Your profile might match with something that somebody done did, and they just want to bring you in for questioning. Yeah, that's where it's coming down to, y'all. That's where it's coming down. That's why you got to have black media and those who out here talking. You got to keep up on this, right? Because otherwise, we be out here and we don't be knowing. So, like what we do over here, I try to keep you as informed as I try to stay informed, right? All right, so now let me show you this, right? Because I'm going to show you this because I got to show you this, right? I got to show you this because, is this the right one? I think this is the right one, right? I think that's it. So, right? So, here it is. You're in a country that, our ancestors, we've been here for long periods of time. And, there'll be some people who would hear me or read some of your comments and say that, you know, it's not that bad. You guys are just, you know, blowing the situation out of proportion. No matter what you show them, they still gonna believe what they want to believe. So they'll take a story like this, right? Let me see if I got that. If I got that, then I can show you that. Let's see. Do I got that in here? Let me see if I got that. I mean, I got that in here, right? No, I think I removed that. Yeah, I removed that. Okay. But earlier this week, or maybe last week, California is going to apologize to the Japanese who were in the internment camps, right? And, you know, a lot of people, when they talk about how the Japanese, you know, receive reparations. But really, when you look at that, look at the consolation. That's really a consolation prize. You know, consolation prize is not when you don't win, you get the second prize. Those who were in the internment camp versus those who was in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So when you look at those in Hiroshima and Nagasaki versus those who were in the internment camp and they got the money that they got, but I bet those in Hiroshima and Nagasaki didn't get nothing. You get what I'm saying? And so we're going to take the lesser pay here, Chuck, right? But since everybody, again, as I did the last show, and they talked about how the candidates was in there, and the one came in there, I ain't for reparations, right? And nobody clapped, everybody sat on their hands like everybody didn't have no hands in there. So, since Martin Luther King's birthday was just about a month ago, right? They decide to do this. And again, some people will take this and they will, you know, they will run with it. And they'll say this is a good thing and shows that we're inclusive and that we're so a part of this and, we're just as equivalent, we're just as equal. Well, check this story out. Again, this story here, check it out. Let me go ahead and do it. Come on back after that. Check this out.
Tomorrow is the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, as well as the day the question, what's in a name, takes on new significance. It's a day, David Martin tells us, that honors a hero and shatters a precedent.
The aircraft carrier is the symbol of American power. 90,000 tons of diplomacy, the Navy likes to say. Almost all of them are named after presidents, until Acting Secretary of the Navy Thomas Modly broke with tradition.
So the list of carriers is going to read Washington, Lincoln, Roosevelt, Reagan, Truman, Eisenhower, Bush, Ford, Kennedy, Miller.
Exactly right. And I like it when you put it that way.
That's Miller as in Dory Miller. The next aircraft carrier to be built will be named for the grandson of slaves and son of sharecroppers. The official announcement is tomorrow.
We've decided to do this on Martin Luther King's birthday out at Pearl Harbor.
His closest surviving relatives, Floretta Miller and Brenda Haven, are still getting used to having a carrier named for their Uncle Dory, who served in the segregated Navy of World War II.
That's a great honor because it's been a hard, long road.
He was born in Waco, Texas, and his first name was actually Doris.
So I've never heard of a man named Doris. Where did that name come from?
My grandma thought she was having a girl, and it wasn't a girl. Doris turned out to be a boy, so that's where that name came from.
Waco has been described in those years as the place where the Old South met the Wild West. And like much of America back then, Jim Crow ruled.
White man was yes, sir. White lady, yes, ma'am. You didn't disrespect whatsoever. Don't care how old you are.
There were no economic opportunities for a young black man, so he joined the Navy. At least there, the pay was steady.
Navy policy at that time limited blacks to those duties that were manual, that they thought didn't require a whole lot of intellect.
Regina Akers is a historian with the Naval History and Heritage Command.
When Dory Miller came in, He was limited to the messman's branch pretty much.
What does a mess attendant do?
Basically, a mess attendant takes care of an officer. You lay out his clothes, you shine his shoes, and then you serve in the officer's mess.
Miller served aboard the battleship West Virginia, which on Sunday morning, December 7, 1941, was tied up on Battleship Row in Pearl Harbor.
Dory Miller had just finished serving breakfast and he was sorting laundry.
The West Virginia was hit by 9 Japanese torpedoes and 2 bombs. Miller was ordered to the bridge to evacuate the ship's captain, who lay mortally wounded. What happened next was dramatized by Cuba Gooding Jr. in the movie Pearl Harbor. Against all rules, Miller manned a machine gun.
The irony of this is that back in the 40s, pre-World War II, African Americans were not allowed to have any jobs where they handled machine guns or any type of lethal force.
When the Navy, which Miller had joined in 1939, awarded medals to those who had fought bravely, it didn't even mention the name Doris Miller.
Why wouldn't the Navy, right from the start, at least identify him by name instead of calling?
I want to apologize for that, y'all. It got cut. It wasn't supposed to cut, but I'm going to actually put it back over there and go back to where we were, because that wasn't supposed to get cut. Somebody was a little quick with their dang hands, so they cut what they weren't supposed to cut. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get us back over to where we was, and then we're going to move from that point, okay? So I want to apologize for that, and we should be ready, and we about there? Okay. All right, going back a little bit, y'all. Let's do it.
Captain, who lay mortally wounded. What happened next was dramatized by Cuba Gooding Jr. in the movie Pearl Harbor. Against all rules, Miller manned a machine gun.
The irony of this is that back in the 40s, pre-World War II, African Americans were not allowed to have any jobs where they handled machine guns or any type of lethal force.
When the Navy, which Miller had joined in 1939, awarded medals to those who had fought bravely, it didn't even mention the name Doris Miller.
Why wouldn't the Navy, right from the start, at least identify him by name instead of calling him an unknown Negro sailor?
Well, see, you'd have to be a Negro in 1939 to understand that. The status of African Americans, they were treated like second-class citizens.
4 months later, the Pittsburgh Courier, perhaps the leading African-American newspaper of the day, finally published the name, and the Secretary of the Navy grudgingly gave him a letter of commendation.
In his opinion, that's all he warranted. However, others...
I'm just going to assume that it's not wanting to do this, right? I mean, have you ever seen on my show where this has happened, right? Have you ever seen this? I don't think we ever done this before, right? So I'm going to try one more again, right? We're going to do it one more again. Get it? Man, what's going on with you?
Miller went on a speaking tour and became a black celebrity in the same league as heavyweight champion Joe Louis and singer Lena Horne.
Some considered him just as important, just as aspirational, drew just as much hope from him.
Is he comfortable with his celebrity?
No, not at all. His goal was really to get to his next ship.
He was assigned to the aircraft carrier Liscum Bay, which less than a year after Pearl Harbor was sunk by a Japanese torpedo. Dory Miller was never seen again.
It's kind of hard thinking of my grandmother, her hurt. She used to say, had I been a white woman, they would have treated me better. But I'm a black woman, and my son is a hero.
Over the years, his legacy has been honored, including with this larger-than-life statue in his hometown of Waco. But that's nothing like having an aircraft carrier named after him. How many carriers are there right now?
Right now we have 11.
So this is an honor reserved for very few Americans.
Absolutely.
The last carrier to be christened was the John F. Kennedy by his daughter Caroline. Construction has not yet begun on the Miller.
Before this ship actually gets into the water, it's probably 7 or 8 years from now.
And once it gets into the water, how long is it going to be around?
50 years.
And like everything else that's celebrated about Dory Miller, it's going to draw some criticism, rest assured.
So what would be the criticism?
Some may suggest it's more than he deserves. Some may say he was just a guy who did his job when general quarters went off on a ship. What's the big deal?
What was your personal reaction?
Oh, I was overwhelmed. It is tremendous. And it's a reminder, too, that heroism is in no way limited by race, by gender, by background, by rank or rating.
And this ceremony is going to take place on Martin Luther King Day.
Never would have thought my uncle would have been next to Martin Luther King or even the same day. Now that's beautiful.
All right. Again, I want to apologize again for that. We finally got it off right. So, according to what this clip is about is what's in a name, right? And we see that the Navy or military wants to go ahead and give honor to Dory Miller, right? He is the grandson of slaves, son of sharecroppers, right? Was in segregated Navy during World War II. And you see, they said there that the aircraft carrier is a symbol of American power, right? Talking about it's the 90,000 pounds of diplomacy, right? You see that coming, you're going to get some act right, because it got everything in there to take care of business, right? And so, you know, it's got, you know, I'm doing this not because, again, as he is an ancestor of A.D.O.S, I mean, he is of the bloodline cut of A.D.O.S, so, or B.A.D.O.S. For the significance of that, we give that, right? But what I'm looking at is, you know, you give these symbolic things in replacement of what you done did. It's kind of like those who have been in a relationship, been with somebody, and they the type of person who don't never, you know, say I'm sorry or don't apologize for shit, but they, you know, they might buy you something or want to take you somewhere. But yeah, y'all ain't really had no meeting of the minds to resolve the real issue of, you know, talked about your mama, you say you ain't, you know, all kind, you know how we get, right? And doing these things here. So I'm like, okay, you know, he went through this litany talking about all these presidents, and then you gave Dory Miller, You're going to put him as an aircraft carrier. The name of an aircraft carrier. Now, for those who cut of the cloth of the other side, I can see why they would see that as something to be honored and, prestigious. When we look at this in reality, it's kind of like saying, I won't make that analogy. But I'm just saying, okay, sometimes I see our people who make things that to me just don't seem like, what's the big hoopla as into that? When you really understand what this is, it's like, I don't want to be associated, fraternized with that, because it has never been done good to me in no sense. Me nor my people. So you can keep that. Just, okay, if I do the job, pay me for my job and all that other stuff, but I don't need all that until you clean up this other stuff. And then once you do that, then maybe we can get into that, right? So we see that in this clip here, you see that, I guess this would be the bloodline left from Dory Miller. And you heard her says back in that time, right? Say, white man, you say, yes, sir. White woman say, no, ma'am. You didn't disrespect whatsoever, no matter how old you was, right? It's still that way to this day, right? That's basically what happened with Snoop, right? But he didn't do it to them. But they made him apologize because she one of theirs, right? She's one of their black friends, right? You better apologize to her, boy, right? And so we see that as it is today in 2020, even in the time when Dory Miller was coming up, there was no economic opportunities. So the only alternative was to do what? Join the military. Isn't that kind of like what it was or has always is? If they ain't got shit else going for you, you always go get you, enlist yourself in and get through boot camp, and then you can get a check. But, what the job entails, you just got to learn how to take orders, right? And you can see the world, travel the world, and you can go to school for free, get a home. But all the stuff you got to do before you get there, you got to be in agreement to it, right? Sign here on the dotted line, right? So we see that that as he goes in, it was a mess attendant, I guess is what you want to call it, right? And as a mess attendant, it's kind of like, butler, shoe shine boy, servant, right? A mess man branch, right? And again, this is not me to belittle him, but these were the opportunity for you to come in, right? You couldn't be a real, soldier. Matter of fact, you ever seen the movie Soldier Story? Huh? Isn't that what that was about? When finally they got the call, God damn, the niggas are going to fry Hitler. Remember that, right? They was finally getting called up because they was getting their ass whooped. So let's put the niggas in here and get them to fight, right? Well, that's how the North and the South was too, right? Every war in this United States we have been a part of, right? But once you're going in the fighting, that's the glory you get for the win. But when you come back home, it's the same old, right? Same old soup, just reheated. So it kind of looked like he went in, he's, going to be, captain's boy, and do some things and, and say that, he was on the West Virginia ship, right? They made a movie about it in 2001 called Pearl Harbor. There you seen Cuba Gooding Jr. on there, right? And so, according to the policies, even back then, it was against all rules that a black person had to deal with anything with a gun, right? No machine gun, no touching, no kind of equipment. Because why? Think about it. When that NRA came into existence in this country, when they made a Smith & Wesson, they also made a law right away saying that black people cannot own guns, right? Always scare you with a damn gun. Matter of fact, it was at that movie where they had Planet of the Apes, right? They had Caesar with a gun in his hand, right? Which is a symbolic representation of something, right? But anyway. And so, she says that woman, that historian that was in there talking about something, well, black people was considered a second-class citizen. Ain't much change, has it, right? Only if you, again, as when I went into the definitions of the wicked word about niggas, say unless you're not classified, if you become classified as a black person and not a nigger, then I guess you wouldn't be considered a second-class citizen. As long as you stay in the nigger category, you are second class slowly or fastly moving to the third because they're bringing everybody else to put in front of you, right? And so what we see, according to here, is that, they said some things in here, right? Now, again, like I said, I'm not making light or belittle the fact because it looks like even though after he did that, they used him, right, after giving him the award, right, because they ended up giving him an award that is a lot of the white men during that time, I think it was called the Navy Cross, I think is what they gave him, right? And when they gave him that, a lot of white men was like, well, what is he getting one for? Right? He's a nigger, he's supposed to get one of them. What happened was, according to how they showed us the movie Pearl Harbor. But if you done did some reading about that, you have to ask yourself, some of the reading I done did, that whole situation that happened with Pearl Harbor, all the real boats and planes, they wasn't there. They were already on other missions. These were kind of like the scraps. And the way they had it aligned where they were all facing each other, so they couldn't get out if something was to come, but accordingly, they already had notification that, the Japanese was in the vicinity and they was going to do what they was going to do. I think at that particular time, they were trying to propagate to the nation, trying to get the people to co-sign to be a part, because again, this was, the alliance between, I think it was Italy, Japan, and Germany, right? And U.S. couldn't get into it. They needed a situation. So somehow they was able to bomb Pearl Harbor, which allowed them to get into World War II. So when you read history, you kind of see some of the things that they said there's never been no conspiracies in this land, but, take it for what you want. You read it, you see it for yourself. And that's how we got into that World War II accordingly. So he was, according to what they just said in there, that he was, taking care of Captain that one, fed him breakfast, and boom, bam, boom, everything go up. So I guess anybody in that situation, bombs going off, motherfuckers firing. I mean, unless you want you gone with the wind. I don't know nothing about busting no babies. You running around doing that. I think if you're going to go out and you got a chance to do something, you can be like, fuck with them policies saying, well, that's a gun. Let's start shooting motherfuckers, right? If I'm going to die, I also try to take a motherfucker with me. And so we see he survived. Then there was a lot of casualties. There's some, stuff about that, but that ain't for this particular time or video to talk about that. But he went back, but what they used him for, based on giving him the medal, he went around with the medal, knowing who he was, right? Now this was to now get other blacks to say, come into the military. Look, you could be like me. You could be decorated like me and be honored like me, right? And that's what they was using him for. So it seemed like he went back on another mission. Somebody went away, and then somehow his boat got sank and never seen him again, right? And so all we're going to do is a commemoration to him on a carrier that's going to come out. So another 7 to 8 years. They're going to be out there for 50 years. And they said something about Martin Luther King, right? And then you hear how the relatives, it's like you never thought that they, relative would be mentioned in the same breath as Martin Luther King. But I want to show something here, right? They always try to use that to us, right? They always try to show, like, they use Martin Luther King, like, in a way that when you really look at what happened to Martin Luther King, when you really look at it, okay? Because what I'm about to show you here, right? What I'm about to show you here, some of you may have seen it. Some of you may not never seen it, right? But we're just going to take what they said, right? Because they honored it. And again, when you want to have their adulations and their acceptance, you got to understand it ain't always direct as they say. It's they got a reason why they do it. But they tried to say that this here, but again, I'm going to show you this, and then I'm going to show you something after the fact, because that's what you got to look at. So, check this out, man. Check this out. Maybe you heard this before, maybe you haven't. And this just going to show you, see, they tell you something, but sometimes it may not be as always what they told you it is. Well, I didn't see it. This is just what it is, right? So check this out, and we shall be right back. Check this out.
Tonight, our nation celebrates one of its most inspirational leaders and activists by honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We know all that he came and dealt with racial fairness and lost his life in that fight. But did you know that there are investigations that have gone on about how actually he died? See, most of us think that we know exactly how he died, how he was shot, and it was an open and shut case. Well, guess what? This is an amazing tale that you're about to hear from Michelle Greenstein about what has been uncovered regarding his death. I'm gonna hand it to you and let you take it away, because in my conversations with you thus far, I have been drop-jawed listening to you.
And so was I. I actually spoke earlier today to Dr. William Pepper. He actually, on behalf of Coretta Scott King and the King family, filed a civil suit in the case of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, this is the only trial that's ever been held about this assassination, because, as we know, James Earl Ray, after he pled guilty, meant there was no trial. So this is the only trial that's ever been held. Now, we're all familiar with the official story of this lone gunman, right, in 67.
James Earl Ray shot him.
He was in jail for armed robbery. He somehow escaped.
Admitted to it.
Right. But what's interesting is that he pled guilty, but he didn't confess. And actually, in these court transcripts, he says over and over, I did not confess to killing King. And he says he only did so because he feared for his life. He and William Pepper told me that the only reason James pled guilty is because it was the only way to save his life. Now, he did this as a last resort, and he was actually told by his lawyer, Percy Foreman, that he should take the guilty plea because that's how he was going to get a new lawyer. So he saw this as his only way to get rid of this bad lawyer and get a new lawyer. And interestingly enough, he filed for an appeal days afterward and tried to get a new trial. So like I said, I spoke to Dr. Pepper earlier today. Here's what he had to say about the way Dr. Martin Luther King was actually killed.
Wow.
He wasn't killed from the bullet that hit him on the balcony. He was taken to the St. Joseph's Hospital, and he was killed in the emergency room of St. Joseph's Hospital by the chief of neurosurgery, Dr. Breen Bland, who came in when they were all working on him in the emergency room, and he said, get out of here, let that die. And as they moved out of the room, the last one out was a surgical nurse Lula Mae Shelby. And when she heard them gathering up spit in their lungs to spit on Martin's body lying on a bed there, then she saw Dr. Bland take the catheters out of Martin's body and take the pillow from under his head and put it over his face and suffocate him. And that's how Martin King died. That's how he was really assassinated. Now, he might have died anyway from the bullet wounds, but he didn't. He was still alive and still breathing. The chief neurosurgeon, he intervened and he made sure that death would result.
Wow. Right? My jaw was on the floor. Now, Dr. Pepper knows this because the son of the nurse, Lula Mae Shelby, who died, but before she died told her family, the son of this nurse told Dr. Pepper under oath. And when Dr. Pepper confronted a member of the Dixie Mafia, he said, yes, this happened, and actually that the chief of surgery was their family doctor, and that 3 weeks before the assassination, he visited them and said, hey, if the bullet doesn't kill him, make sure he goes to St. Joseph's, because we will make sure that he dies. Now, let's talk about this case, okay? This was the civil suit in 1999 where Pepper represented the King family, and that really made the family feel like they had closure, and like I said, it was the only trial ever held. The Memphis jury in this case decided that local, state, and federal governments were liable for King's death, and that this was a real conspiracy, a conspiracy between the U.S. military, the Memphis PD, and Dixie Mafia, these crime figures in Memphis, Tennessee.
This is just for the audience.
Right.
This is a civil case that was brought, much like the O.J. case,
right,
where they couldn't find him guilty here, but finally when a civil jury heard it, they came out with a
It was the only trial, yes, and there was 30 days of trial, and over 70 witnesses were heard. And Dr. Pepper told me earlier today that it took the jury less than an hour to decide after these 30 days
that this was a true conspiracy.
Correct.
Where others may have been involved.
Correct.
Other than the person who was accused.
And that James Earl Ray was the fall man, and that he was unwittingly, unknowingly part of this conspiracy. And the real shooter, I gotta say this, even though we can't get to the whole story, was Frank Strouser. He was a Memphis police officer, the best shot in the Memphis PD, and he was the one who actually fired the fatal shot.
Right, so we are back, right? Oh, right, you heard that, right? You heard what they said, right? Okay, so, you know, they just made a documentary, right, on Netflix, right, about Malcolm X. They're talking about reopening that case, right? So everything that they say is never what they say, right? It's always something else, right? So, for those who might be shocked, never heard that, that's the alternative. That supposedly is the real story, right? That was a lawyer, again, was Coretta Scott King and the family went and did what they did, ended up winning that case. The individual you heard speaking was the lawyer, so what did he gain from lying about that, right? So when we heard those two sisters that was the ancestors of Dory Miller and talking about how they honor their relative, which is our ancestor, and trying to name him as an aircraft carrier. Then we have to ask ourselves, just like they have a monument sitting there in Washington, Martin Luther King. So is it really a benefit, or is it just something to be able to be used and be like, hey, look, it has another significance that we're going to use it for. One saying the way you're looking at it, but they may have an entirely another way of looking at it, right? Then I got this one too, this little piece for you here, just in case, because, you know, they say ain't nobody, no worse hate than black hate, right? I hear a lot of people saying this, but I never seen nobody say this part, right? Maybe you heard this, maybe you didn't. Because you got to remember, they say nobody hate worse than a black person, right? So what happens when somebody cloaking themselves, right? And to do the dirty work? Well, just in case you didn't catch this, I got this for you here. Check this one out to go along on top of this. Ready? Check this out.
One of the most disliked white men in the black community allegedly was black himself. That rumor doesn't surprise those who observe some of those blacks who pass over and become white bigots to cover their tracks, or perhaps they just suffer from self-hatred. But it sent Millie McGee back to her family tree in Macomb, Mississippi, to see if the man who became synonymous with the FBI and hatred of Martin Luther King Jr. was himself her cousin, who had gone through the special Underground Railroad built from the South to Washington, D.C. for blacks who looked white enough to live as white people.
Thank you very much.
Just when you thought you heard it all, huh? I got to make sure they know I'm down with them, huh? See, sometimes the worst enemy is some of our own people. You know, sometimes you don't know it be them, right? So, wow, huh? Think about that. You know, the information is all out here, y'all. And so, you know, but, you know, when they want to give you something, but then they don't tell the whole story to it. So that kind of makes it, reason why it went out so hard is because I want to make sure, you know, when you see that story there and get the whole background of it, you'll know why. One was so avid and so fierce. Oh, I'm going to end out on this here because we're coming up on the anniversary of it next year. Like, it seems like ever since we went from, you know, going into this 2020, which is, you know, or 2019, like we've been having a lot of little anniversaries to commemorate our ancestors, right? So here's one they doing. And we'll end out on this here. I'll make sure it's all good here, right? Yeah, this is there. Okay. So check this out, and then I'll come back and we're going to end this up for the night, all right? But hopefully it was pretty much self-explanatory, right? You know, putting the pieces together, because it went from what somebody said as a mayor and the protocols that went out to, you know, apprehend and to get rid of, you know, deter crime and little girl, and then there was, you know, could be a judge, and then there's the data, right? And then, you know, when they want to commemorate you, you know, you done good work for us, but, you know, and then somebody else, and then you just get to see how this, you know, how it goes, right? You know, again, truth don't need no partner. It's all right there, right? So, just in case for those who don't know what's coming up, check this out, and we shall be right back.
This day, they gonna know. If they take one of us, they will have to take us all.
The story of the Tulsa Race Massacre is now being told on the big screen. The movie Black Wall Street Burning deals with the racial tensions of 1921 and how a minor incident caused those tensions to explode, resulting in hundreds of black lives and buildings lost. The movie is showing right now at the Cinema Circle Theater. One woman who saw the movie tells us that it raised a few questions for her.
Is there remorse, and will they ever receive reparations for that? It would be like saying, I'm sorry this happened.
Another man says that he believes the movie is a fair representation of what happened and says that he's happy the story is being told.
At this day and time, I'm glad to see it's being put out there. These kids need to know what happened.
Tomorrow is the last day that Black Wall Street Burning will be showing at the Circle Cinema.
All right, y'all. So I want to thank each and every one of you for clicking on the video. Comment, like, subscribe, share, dislike. It's the EOC over here. So somebody has to report this, right? It's all public information. It's not nothing that they don't know. It's that sometimes we just don't know. And it's about being informed so you can have better choices. And just seeing how, again, they say chess, people making moves and doing things. We have to do and be mindful so that the moves that the people are making, that at least they have become available to us, that at least we see what's going on. So I want to thank each and every one of you. And again, when you see your brother, what's good, brother? When you see your sister, what's good, sister? If you can't do that much, you can at least do a universal nod. Understand that we are living in a day and time where there are some who are looking for our demise. So it's incumbent that we stay mindful, vigilant, and aware of all that's taking place. Again, this is Black Minds News. I'm your host, Mr. Blows Your Mind. I want to say peace, love, and to the next show, y'all. To the next show. Some of us got allies, right? You can ask your allies a couple questions, right? One, ask them, have they ever heard of John Brown, right? And ask them, how come white folks ain't never, ever made a movie about John Brown? Like, why is it that the worst thing that for a white man to do is have sacrifice his whole family and the betterment for black people? Why would a movie be made for that? Two, but ask your allies if the shit get hot and when shit jump off, are they gonna still be in the frying pan with you? So, again, Black Minds News Report. To the next show. To the next show.